The 50th anniversary of the war's end approaching, I found myself feeling outraged and betrayed when not only our national museum, the Smithsonian Institution, but some American historians as well, attempted to change the history of the war in the Pacific. Suddenly, I was hearing that Americans had been the aggressors and the Japanese had been the victims. The exhibit of the Enola Gay, originally proposed by the Smithsonian, an exhibit that would be viewed by millions of Americans who would undoubtedly accept it as a factual representation of the war, was for me the final insult to the truth. To quote from the script of that planned exhibit, for most Americans, this war was a war of vengeance. For most Japanese, it was a war to defend their unique culture against Western imperialism. I had occasion to read not only the original script of that planned exhibit, but several of the rewrites that followed. They grossly minimized casualty estimates for an invasion of the Japanese mainland, one of the factors that had driven President Truman's decision to drop the bombs. They placed greater emphasis on alleged Allied racism against the Asians than, for example, on the hundreds of Navy men who had been entombed in the USS Arizona at the bottom of Pearl Harbor. Some of those men were trapped for days before they died. 49 photographs were to be exhibited showing the suffering Japanese victims of the war, and only 3 photographs of wounded Americans. This selection of exhibits was puzzling, given that the history of the war in the Pacific was also synonymous with Corregidor, Bataan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and Saipan. It was a history of Japanese prisoner of war camps, sites of unspeakable inhumanities, of kamikazes, and of the infamous medical experiments conducted by Japanese doctors on live prisoners of war. Were Americans, one might ask upon learning all the facts, compelled to be brutalized until the Japanese were ready to say, "We'll stop"? One day, those of us who fought the war, who were eyewitnesses to it, will no longer be here to set the record straight. What, then, will future generations be told about America's role in the war in the Pacific? Who will be left to give an accurate first-hand account? The question is troubling. Why would present-day historians choose to minimize the sacrifices made by so many for all of us and call into question the motives of the United States in using atomic bombs to end the war? Is it to make the greater point that nuclear weapons are a menace to the world? They clearly are. But that truism does not excuse reworking the war in the Pacific to accommodate and advance anyone's political philosophy. It does not justify bad scholarships creating pseudo-history. I began to focus my outrage by speaking out against any revision of events as they actually happened in the context of the war. I decided to write this book. I've been asked, why now? What's your purpose? My purpose in writing this book is not to chronicle an aging veteran's memories about what a younger generation may see as ancient history, nor is it to recite the horrors of World War II in the Pacific as a means of denigrating the Japanese people. To the contrary, Japan has been a stable and valued ally of the United States since the end of World War II. I believe it is in our national interest to maintain that alliance and to strengthen the economic and military ties that bind us together. But while doing so, it is equally important to recognize that Japan and the world are better places today because Japanese fascism failed to conquer Asia, and that in victory, the United States was benevolent and not vengeful. I certainly do not offer this book as a celebration of the use of nuclear weapons. It is my fervent hope that there will never be another atomic mission. The bombs we dropped in 1945 were primitive in comparison to nuclear weapons today. As the man who commanded the last atomic mission, I pray that I retain that singular distinction. I am memorializing my story because I have learned that we who lived the events of history have an obligation to preserve and report upon the facts. The soul of a nation, its essence, is its history. It is that collective memory which defines what every generation thinks about itself and its country. It is a memory not to be tampered with, or recklessly revised, rewritten, or changed. 50 years ago, we fought the Empire of Japan. whose imperial army and navy